There's no substitute for hard work. The only added piece of to that component to me is work smarter, but you still have to work hard.
You just heard Anthony Olivieri talking about what it takes to become a successful real estate investor. Anthony Olivieri, principal of Olivieri Commercial Group, founded the company in 1997 after gaining 10 plus years of commercial real estate experience in Central California, working primarily with CBRE. Throughout his career, Anthony has assisted countless clients with their diverse real estate needs and successfully grown his own real estate portfolio. After managing several successful projects with individual partners, Anthony formed BOMAR Partners in 2016 with the intent to deliver double-digit returns by investing in commercial real estate projects. BOMAR Partners was created with a focus on the acquisition of value-added opportunities and ground-up development. With over 35 years of brokerage and ownership interests in commercial real estate, Anthony has a proven track record and knows how to navigate the challenging landscape of commercial real estate investments. In today's show, we discuss Anthony's career in real estate and then the Bakersfield commercial real estate market. Later in the show, we talk about how to become a successful real estate investor. And lastly, be sure to stay tuned to hear about Anthony's commitment to his family and what that does to drive him.
Welcome back to the Our 2 Cents podcast, the show where your local professionals sit down with an array of guests to hear their story and impart some wisdom for both business and life-improving skills. This is your place to hear business and community leaders discuss relevant topics that matter to you.
And welcome to the show today. I am John Duffield, local CPA, and I'm your host today. And I am here with Anthony Olivieri, who is the president of Olivieri Commercial Group and president of BOMAR Partners. Before we begin in today's episode, I would like to encourage our listeners to follow us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. It's a great way to catch up on any episodes that you might have missed. Anthony, thank you for being here today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, John.
I've known you for a long time, and I'm excited to get you in this capacity, right? Every other time that I've seen you, I've just got snippets of you. So I've got you on the hot seat today, and I'm excited about that. So Anthony, you've built what I consider to be a very successful commercial real estate career, brokerage firm, and then your own personal portfolio. Take us back. I mentioned this to you on the phone earlier today, and I really would love you to kind of take us back and tell us what started that.
Yeah, so that was an interesting thought process when you brought that up, in terms of what's relevant, I guess, right? That I would think most people would know about me. I think one of the things as a youngster, I was taught at an early age to work hard, save money, and to invest that money as a young kid, right? So my dad would take me out, and his thing was to go collect beer cans and aluminum cans, and so we would pile them in the back of a truck and then go down to the recycle center and cash them in and make $20, and that'd be my money, and he'd match whatever I collected. So and then the next business day we'd go down to Security Bank and put it in my passbook account, and I used to love watching him stamp it and write that new number in the passbook. So I learned that at probably 8, 9, 10 years old range.
So you were accumulating it back then and liked that.
And liked it, yeah. So I had an attraction back then to saving money. So and then as I got a little bit older, I learned the aspect kind of buying appreciating assets, not depreciating assets. That came from my father-in-law. So something I try to apply in our daily lives, which is to my wife's frustration sometimes. But right. But I was like, is it making money or is it costing us money? So then I kind of learned the piece of my time and the value of my time. So again, being a youngster, I did some piecework for actually a family member in the carpentry business. And so the idea was, he said, look, I'll pay you $5 an hour to do this job, or I'll pay you $50 to get this job done. And I realized if I could do that job in, like, in say 3 hours, my multiple of time per hour just goes up substantially, right?
Sure.
So I'm out hustling to finish the job in 2.5 or 3 hours versus taking half a day to get it done or whatever it was.
Yeah, perfect.
So I realized that I could go out and do that, and my time was very valuable at that point based on my work and my effort that I put forth.
Yeah. So obviously that your dad beating that savings into you, that happened when you were 8 or 9 or 10, whatever. You were very young at that time, but then you said lesson from your father-in-law of appreciating assets. So I'm assuming you didn't get married in your teens, and a little older when that happened. And then that piecework and that hustle, right? And so that's something to, that sticks with you. How old were you when you went into commercial real estate? Was that something you did immediately after college? Did you go to college?
Yeah, so my career path was probably unique in the sense that I bought my first property when I was 18, living at home with my parents. It was an investment that I made through, at that point, became my father-in-law. It was an opportunity. We were talking one night and I said, I've got a little bit of money to invest. I mean, a few $1,000s, but that I'd saved up. I wanted to put it in the stock market, but I didn't really have any advisors or anybody I could follow as a mentor on that piece. So he said, well, why don't you buy a piece of real estate? And I'm like, how do I do that?
Sure.
Young kid. And well, I got this house. I'll sell it to you. I'll carry back a note and, but it's your problem. Like, if something happens, it's on you. Payments due every month, it's on you. So I talked to my parents about it and they said, yeah, do it. We'll back you 100%. So I gave him every penny I had in my savings account, and he gave me the deed to a house, and along with a loan, but had a tenant in there that was paying monthly rent, and it cash flowed. And so I'm at high school, in my civics class, and I'm collecting rent. Right, I'm getting paid. So
it's got to be a pretty good feeling.
Yeah.
Right?
So I tell people all the time I got addicted to cash flow at a pretty young age. So it's like it's good and bad, but. Yeah. So that started my real estate career, and then from there, I started a property maintenance company because I had some skills that I developed as just working during the summers, different people, and so I started that business when I was 19. My first business I started when I was 13, but it failed, and I got back up and started back at it again. But so at 19, I started my maintenance business, and I was going to BC at the time, and I did my first flip right about that same time, made some money there. So I changed my direction at BC from architecture to real estate, and then finished up at BC, and then jumped right into the real estate business, which was the residential side of the business for about a year. Thought that's where I wanted to be. Didn't really fit me and my personality. And I wasn't really doing it as a principal as much as I was trying to be an agent, which is really tough for me at that, being very young and inexperienced. And, so from there, I got a great break. I was hired on by a local commercial real estate firm. And from there, I kind of developed my skill set.
Yeah, I saw that was Coldwell Banker Commercial Real Estate. No, or is that, what was that firm?
That's who recruited me from the local. It was Charles Tingey at the time. Okay. But they recruited me from Tingey, and that was the CBRE, or it used to be Coldwell Banker, then it became CB Commercial, then CBRE.
Yep. So you started with Tingey, then went to CBRE, and so what? By the time you ended up at Tingey, how old were you then?
I was 21. Actually, when I started.
Well, it's still on the young side when you're doing commercial real estate, right? Because the people that you're dealing with very successful business owners that have amassed this, this commercial real estate portfolio, and here you are 21 years old, right?
So I learned early on that I couldn't let my age be an inhibitor, and so what I had to do to overcome that obstacle is have knowledge, right? I had to have strong market knowledge and information that people could rely on, and not look across the table and see somebody who's fairly young in the face.
Sure.
But if I'm giving them quantitative, accurate data and information about their property and giving them good advice, age didn't really matter. So that's kind of what I leaned on for probably the better part of 10 years of my career in the very beginning.
Yeah, I got to tell you an aside, by the way. So my middle son has a new profession. He lost his job and then started looking for another job and wants to be somewhat self-employed. And so he is a new New York life insurance agent and effectively kind of a strictly commission guy. And Austin is 26 and he's got a baby face like crazy. And so if he's clean shaven, he looks very, very young. And so, I've said you've got to be professional, right? And so that's product knowledge, industry knowledge, and understanding, what's appropriate for that particular consumer that you're working with, right? And then looking professional and being professional yourself at the same time.
That's a big part of it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're right. You have to know the product that you're working with and how that potentially impacts your client or your customer.
Sure. So you're at CBRE, then what?
So I was there for about 9 years, was in the retail department. Again, I think I was a bit intimidated in the sense that most of my peers that I worked with both locally and across the country all had pretty substantial pedigrees of family relationships or colleges that they attended and alumni associations they were part of. And, not to say that, BC wasn't a great school to be a part of, but it just didn't kind of compare to some of the universities and schools across the country.
Sure.
So I made a point to be available, to be a sponge essentially. To if I had to travel to Los Angeles 2 or 3 times in a given week, I would for meetings, for a 1-hour meeting, for a handshake. I just felt committed that I needed to do that, to put myself out there, to show people my willingness and my commitment to the profession and what I was trying to do. So I did that for a number of years. I was part of a strategic retail team that rolled out platforms and programs for national tenants, site selection, doing site surveys and work with them, identifying property opportunity where they can go and expand. And then after about 9 years, I left CB for my own company, which really at that time the intent wasn't to create a brokerage firm or a company in sense to compete with them. It was really more with a view of kind of creating my own opportunity and to develop our own projects eventually, which now we do.
Okay. So you left there, didn't say, hey, I'm going to go out and be a retail, real estate broker and on the commercial side and go do that. That wasn't the ambition.
Not really, but keep in mind back in 97, the technology that's available today wasn't even probably thought of at that point in time, a lot of it.
Sure.
So it was very, very hard to compete on a large scale with a company of that size. So it changed my business platform, my direction pretty substantially. So I really focused more on local relationships. It became a lot more landlord-centric than I did necessarily user or tenant-centric, because I didn't have the capabilities in terms of my access to data and information that they had.
Sure.
Back in that day, we had to pay for aerial photography, which cost thousands of dollars at a whack. Today it's Google Earth and it's free.
Right,
so
right.
It's a little different situation. But so I created some relationships and just kind of really built those. But, one of the things I thought was real important in terms of talking about what happened in 97 when I started my own company, it really allowed us to create an environment that we kind of set the rule essentially for people coming in to work in our environment with us and team members, and that was really for us to set the core values of integrity, knowledge, and commitment with a focus of serving our clients, day in and day out. Not to suggest that didn't happen at CB, but for us, it was when you walk in the door, that's what you're committed to do. And if you're not committed to do that, then unfortunately there's no space for you here.
Sure.
So it allowed us to create a great work environment in that sense.
Yeah, no doubt. So going back now, if you were now 21 years old and going into the commercial real estate industry, what would you tell, if you were giving my son advice or your child advice going into that, without having you to be there to be their mentor, what would you tell them? What's that track look like?
That's a great question. I think that, looking back, I would say there's no substitute for hard work. The only added piece of to that component to me is work smarter. But you still have to work hard. And so, use technology, make that your friend, be as advanced as you possibly could be. That's one of the things I tried to do. Is I was one of the very first people within that office, the local office, to have a desktop computer. And so it tells you how far back that goes.
Right.
And, but I was committed to learning technology and using it to my advantage. And so I would say that, be a craftsman in what you do, understand all the nuances to it. It doesn't matter if you're selling a cell phone or you're selling a $100 million piece of real estate.
Sure.
You have to know what you're marketing and selling.
Yeah, sure. I go back and think back and go, hey, what's that like? And, you and I are a little older. We're not 21 anymore. And so, we kind of look back with perspective, but you go, hey, what would that, if I was 21 and really honestly understood it, right? So now we're being mentored and you're hearing it, but do you really understand it and can embrace that? And so it's tough, to be, you don't, when you're that age, you don't know what you don't know. And, this information that is available in the world is so broad that, you just don't know where to start. And so, I think you follow the model and do what you're told and, work really hard and try to understand the nuances. So Olivieri Commercial Group, what type of properties do you guys specialize in now? If you said somebody wanted to use you for as a commercial real estate broker, where do you specialize? Where do you guys shine?
So our primary focus had been commercial retail projects. That's where I really learned the business when I was at CBRE. It's what I probably knew the best. Back in around 2005, our local build for sale office market really hadn't developed yet. And it was something that I, again, tried to immerse myself into learning and understanding that product pretty well through colleagues I have down in Southern California in that market where they had been doing that for a while. So we had the opportunity to work on a couple local projects that were converted into build for sale projects, meaning an office building that somebody could come in and buy, builder come in and build it for them and then sell it to them, and then they can do as they wish on the interior for their own improvements. So we actually took a large segment of the market back between 2005 to about 2008, working not exclusively in that area, but put a great deal of effort into that area. So we really learned the vertical construction part of the business, the cost related to it. And with that, we did a significant number of small business loan transactions. So we get to know that business pretty well, the nuance surrounding small business administration loans. So for us, we've kind of broadened our palette a little bit where we extended beyond retail and did a lot of commercial office on that level. Did some commercial office leasing as well, still do. So, we cover all segments. As I mentioned, when I left CB back in the day, I felt like I couldn't have that one niche that I had back at CB, which was in retail only. So I felt like I had to learn all segments of the business: office leasing, industrial, retail, investments, which I already knew, and land development, which I already had a background in as well. The one thing that we don't specialize or spend time on are apartments, and that's primarily because it was just a conscious effort that I made not to bring that into kind of our system.
Not to pursue that.
But today we spend a great deal of time really in the investment segment, analyzing investment projects that we can do for our own account, our own portfolio, as well as bringing partners in.
Sure, which is a great segue into my next question, question was you and our BOMAR have done a number of development projects. What do you like working on in that space, right? What are you guys good at? And so if you put a partnership together, what's that typically going to be?
Yeah, so we found ourselves in kind of a unique place a few years ago where, because of our skill set and what we've been able to develop internally in the office with having just great team members, we were able to perform and complete build-to-suits for some national tenants that were very challenging at the time that we actually completed them, and took a great deal of time. But it was very rewarding to be able to do that, and again, kind of sharpen a skill set of saying, okay, I can go out and find a piece of land and do the entitlement piece if I need to, and do some adjustments to the piece one way or the other. And then I can go vertical, build it, negotiate the lease with the tenant, and keep it as part of our portfolio, finance it, keep it, or sell it and move on to the next project. So we went through that cycle a few years ago and have continued to work on projects like that. And we also have been working on some redevelopment projects where we find kind of an undervalued piece of real estate and put our twist to it, and or spin to it, I should say, and then refinance it and bring back money or sell it and move on to the next project. So we cover both gamuts, ground up development, build on a build-to-suit basis, or a redevelopment. As it relates to partners, it really kind of depends on what offering we have at any given moment. There are times when we have opportunity to bring partners in, and there's opportunities where we don't necessarily, that isn't present. But in all cases, if we do bring a partner into a project, there's multiple levels and types of partnerships that we've created over the years. Most recently, what we've done is put together basically a sponsor type partnership where we'll be the general partner, bring in limited partners, and they'll invest a specific amount of money from a marginal amount to a very large amount, depending on what their appetite is. And they receive a return on investment based on the performance of the property. And whatever our business plan is for the property, whether it's a long-term hold, could be 5 years, 7 years, 10 years, it could be 1 year, flip it, and move on to the next deal. So it just kind of depends on what the business opportunity is.
Yeah, I've known people that have invested in your partnerships, and I like the process. So whatever you're doing, that's good. As consumers or Bakersfieldians, as we are, right? What's going on out there in the community that we should be excited about or might be interesting to us?
So I think one question we get asked often is, what's the health of the market? And, because we see things on the national news, and we think sometimes that the one question that we're asked frequently is the commercial real estate market, how tied is it to the residential market? Is it the same? And our response is generally no, they're not the same. So for instance, right now we're seeing on the commercial side, and have seen this actually quite a while, even all through the COVID period, the industrial market is extremely strong right now, meaning that there's very limited supply, very low vacancy. Values are still at all-time high levels on values for leases and for properties to purchase. The office market is very strong, very, very low vacancy there as well, even with consolidation of work from home offices and some lease renewals not happening.
It's not what I would have expected to see, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
It just is surprising to me because we hear of softness, right? We're supposed to have some degree of softness in our community that's happened. The oil industry is relatively strong right now, I think, which is great and is adding some safety for us. The work from home part I would have thought that office space would have gotten a little softer than it has been. So it's fascinating to me.
Yeah, we're seeing a little bit, but it's not as significant as I think we read in the papers or maybe the national news that's reported. And then the other one that's surprising, I think, to a lot of people is the retail sector, that it's still extremely strong. Well-positioned shopping centers maintain very high levels of occupancy with a few exceptions. There have been some impacts in the retail sector with, of course, e-commerce and some things that have happened there. And part of that is to retailers not being able to pivot and adjust to e-commerce the way that they probably should have. But it's that's one area where we've seen some adjustments. But for the most part, what we're seeing today in all sectors is really more build to suit, meaning that there's a specific tenant with a specific need, and they have a development relationship or development partner that comes into a market and says, okay, we're going to go build this product for this specific user. So currently there are large retail developments planned in every quadrant of the city. So significant projects of 20 to 50 plus acres, which are anywhere from 250,000 to probably 500,000 square feet. And for instance, like the former East Hills Mall is one example. There's a large piece out in the Northwest.
So that East Hills Mall is going to be a project?
Eventually, yeah. I mean, I don't ask me to look into the crystal ball, but no, I'm just kidding. I think now with the removal of those older improvements that were there and bringing it back down to the ground really helps, because you truly now have a clean slate. You can do what you want. So I know there's some progress happening there, which is great to see for the community at large, and especially for the Northeast. Projects in the deep Southwest and the Southeast part of town, there's projects there as well.
Any new names that we don't have in our community right now?
Not that I can speak of at the moment. We're seeing a lot of the same, meaning that a lot of retailers that are located throughout the community that are doing well are looking to expand locally and add more units. We'll see a few names pop up here and there in terms of on the retail sector. Where we'll see new interest is probably in the food segment. We'll see a few new names pop up.
Food meaning restaurant
food
side?
Restaurants, QSR, quick serve restaurants. Yeah. Fast casual restaurants, the ones that have survived through COVID and are strong balance sheets are expanding and growing and looking for opportunities. So we'll definitely see more of that happening throughout all of the community.
Interesting. What have you seen with rents or rent pricing? I think you said it's obviously very strong on the industrial side. Is it strong on office and retail as well?
It's so location specific, because for instance, there's various classes of properties that we might look to: Class A, Class B, Class C. As you can imagine, the A's are the top, and the C's are kind of in the tertiary side or third level. But
stop and help me to understand that better, because I think I know it a little bit, but I'm not sure every listener that we have understands that. What's an A versus a B versus that C?
In our market, it's somewhat subtle. If you go into a larger metropolitan market, it's very obvious, meaning that an A property should provide a tenant with more amenities, whether it's going to be finished, not necessarily just all finishes, but some of those finishes of the lobby, the entry, the 4A area, restrooms, reception area, the ground level entry, welcoming somebody in, directories into multiple floors of elevators. So there's a handful of Class A buildings in our market, which can be debated amongst brokers and property owners,
Sure.
And a B property is going to be something that offers just a little less, maybe in the way of amenities or finishes, and Class C would be, again, a little less than that. So Class C might be just a walk-up building, no elevator, no second floor, more garden style, but not necessarily, because there's some very high quality, nice walk-up buildings that are garden style that some people would say that's probably a Class A based on the finishes and the amenities that are inside.
Yeah, sure.
So, but geographically, it's important to identify too where we're looking at and comparing for everything, for every segment, whether it's industrial, office, or retail. But overall, I'd say rents have gone up in the last 36 months pretty substantially and consistently. As of right now, as we're rolling into new market trends and conditions with rates being what they are, we'll probably see that stabilize to some degree, but I don't foresee them going backwards. The main reason is because new product is very hard to come by. As I mentioned, the new product that is being built on a build-to-suit basis. That means It's already committed to by a tenant. So we're not having speculative development. We're not having a big competition, a lot of new space coming on the market, which will drive rents down typically.
Yeah, it's you're reading my mind on kind of some of how my notes are flowing here, because one of my points is that your industry, I think, is very, very what I call model based, at least from an investment perspective, right? And so, you get a bunch of accounting types or the right accounting staff in a brokerage firm that's inputting, numbers in the spreadsheets to figure out, whether or not what I call the model works. And so, in my opinion, is very, very sensitive to interest rates or what I would call drastic swings in interest rates, which we have seen recently. What do those drastic changes in interest rates, what does that do from a commercial perspective?
It's substantial. It affects all areas within the real estate cycle. So, for instance, if we are to go out and complete a build-to-suit, let's say for a national tenant, which we have a couple of those that we're working on right now, we have one example where we negotiated a lease with the tenant 18 months ago with the intent that they would be open and operating as of today. We've run into a few challenges with getting permitting and through the municipality, which caused delays, which pushed us into a problem with material costs and supply chain issues, which we couldn't necessarily foresee it being as severe as it has been. And it's changed. And then on top of that, you throw on interest rate change.
Sure.
So you could see how a project that penciled 18 months ago that we're committed to building doesn't have the same return today as it did back then. So those are the projects you just hope to get through and say goodbye to and move on to better times. But our point is that, as I've mentioned, one of our core values is commitment to our clients. And so we're going to see that to the bitter end. We'll see that project completed and then move on. But it does have a major impact to cost of occupancy. And tenants recognize that as well. So like a lot of the national tenants understand cost of material, cost of money today is driving rental rates up. And if they want to be at that location bad enough, then they're going to pay the freight. And if they don't, then the project's not going to happen.
Sure. I had the what I call the great fortune to sit in on a kind of a presentation recently, and they were talking about placement of real estate locations, and the subject of demographics came up. And I'm smart enough to know that demographics exist, but I was fascinated with kind of the how in depth that profession is now, or how in depth that information is available to you guys. Talk about that a little bit, and what you guys have available to you, and how you can kind of pinpoint where something might go.
Yeah, so that's a good question. Interesting topic as well, because there's demographics or psychographics, and now they have something where they do what's called geofencing. So they're able to identify through, there's different technologies that are out there, but through cell phone tracking as well as credit card transactions, they can determine basically where people come and go, and real-time data as to, within days of activity happening. And so for a lot of retailers, they'll analyze that data, and that'll help them make decisions on certain geographic locations.
Sure.
So, our customer is in this area or going by here every day or whatever it might be.
Now, what was that back in the day?
Yeah, it was somebody sitting on a street corner
doing
counting cars. Or, literally.
Right.
Literally. So again, technology's changed so much in the last 20, 30 years. It relates to this, that it takes a lot of the guesswork out of having to make good decisions or being able to make good decisions.
Yeah, I got to tell you, interesting along the line of demographics, but kind of aside, I read an article that was about a Wall Street hedge fund, and they had employed satellites that were doing car counts for different retailers in their parking lots for Christmas time, and comparing it with historical data to try to do earnings forecasts, so they knew whether or not they were going to bet long or short on a stock. And so, they were using that technology to go back and go do that. And it's, it's fascinating and scary at the same time that they're watching us, right?
So true. Yeah, it is definitely fascinating and scary. And it just kind of goes to prove the point that there's so many decisions today that is data-driven, right, that we don't even realize as consumers in the marketplace, the data that's being utilized to make decisions. So it is very fascinating, but the technology has changed dramatically. So I use the term kind of guesswork. It's not really guesswork, but it's an educated guess on a large scale.
Sure.
But they really try to minimize that risk.
Well, as you should, and the information's available, so you should use it.
Yep.
I have clients that I think would be great commercial real estate owners or investors, not developers, and maybe not even landlords necessarily, but somebody would be a great investor in that space. How does somebody get started in that? And if they said, hey, I want to start to build a commercial real estate portfolio as opposed to a residential portfolio, is there a space for those people? And if so, how would they get started?
Yeah, so it's a great question, because I think it seems like as of late, whether it's the interesting volatility in the stock market or people just having general conversation about where to invest money and to diversify, it seems like this topic comes up quite a bit. So I kind of break it down and look at it as though investors have, say, potential investors have multiple choices to be engaged and involved in real estate investing in general. Probably the most common that we would think common would be somebody buys a residential property and rents it out, and they're now a landlord. And we know there's pluses and minuses to that situation. There are ways of getting involved in partnerships that 2 or 3 people have a great idea. They want to pull their money together, and somebody goes out and runs the partnership and goes out and buys something. We know there's been successes and failures in those relationships as well.
Sure.
There's group investments. There's the syndicated projects. There are the sponsor projects that we do locally and regionally. There's companies that do it on a national scale, regional scale, local scale. And then, of course, there's REITs that someone can go out and buy individual stocks of a company, and you can do it in every sector that's out there. You can do it in the healthcare sector. You can do it in retail. You can do it in self-storage. It doesn't matter. There's a REIT out there that'll be happy to take your money.
Sure.
All of those have different elements of risk associated with them and also rewards related to them. So for us, a big part of it is, what is ultimately the investor's end goal? What are they trying to achieve? Yep. And is it diversification? Is it they're looking for the cash flow potential coming out of something? Are they looking for the tax benefits of something? Is it long-term appreciation that they're looking for? So there's ample opportunity for investors to engage in the real estate market at every level. So you could take somebody who wants to buy a REIT. They could do it with whatever that costs, the one share is of the REIT.
Yeah, Anthony, what it feels like to me, because I meet with a lot of clients, and it's always, where do I put my money? And, what do I do? I'm sitting on a pile of cash and I'm earning 0%, or today a little bit, a little higher than that. But this is the common theme, if I could generalize amongst all those people, is they want some amount of cash flow. Doesn't have to be a substantial amount of cash flow, but it's almost like psychologically they want to see something coming back, right? So they want to see a little bit of money coming back to them, but then they want that long-term appreciation. So they're not dependent on a 8 or 9 or 10% yield to be able to eat today, but they want something coming back to them, but they'd ultimately like to be able to exit down the road 5 or 10 or 15 or how many ever years with what would be considered a great return, something that maybe would be 10 or 15% or something to that effect that would be, kind of compounded, annualized internal, that internal rate of return. And so I know it sounds easy. It's probably very doable if you're the right person and under the right circumstances, but it's hard in reality, right? To go put that together for what I would consider to be that kind of that individual investor and consumer that doesn't know what they don't know.
Yeah, exactly. So what you kind of characterized there would be the typical investor that we would work with, like in one of our projects. We have a number of conversations with investors and explain, kind of lay out for them the risks involved in investing in the project and what the potential rewards are as well. 9 times out of 10, it's what you just framed. It's somebody who has some excess money. They want to diversify their investment portfolio. They're looking for some form of cash flow, whether it goes into a retirement account or actually goes to them that's spendable. They can use it today, and hopefully gain some tax benefits from it and some appreciation. And whether that investment lasts 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, whatever it might be, they're okay with it. It's just like, again, putting it in another form of a retirement account or investment account. It's just a diversification. So we work with a number of investors on that level, and us, and there are other companies that do it as well. My recommendation is that if somebody finds himself in that position where they're thinking, that may be an attractive option, is sit down with advisors such as yourself, maybe an attorney, have a conversation with the syndicator, with the general partner, saying, okay, let's kind of walk through this project. What are the risks? What are the rewards? what ultimately is my initial return, what's my ultimate IRR or my overall return on investment annualized, and make a good decision there, because 9 times out of 10, it's that you need to make an informed decision based upon what am I putting my money into? Does that seem reasonable? And who am I putting my money with?
Yeah,
right?
Who am I sharing it with?
Yeah.
Right.
Who am I writing that check to?
Right.
Yeah. And it's a level of trust and comfort that that you're working with an expert in the market that knows the product, and it isn't, as I like to say, isn't their first rodeo, and has a track record and has the experience. So on a local level, that's, I think, very important. Regional level, very important. I know companies that do this on a national scale, and some clients have been very comfortable with their program. That's the piece. It's not one size fits all, is that it's kind of unique to every investor's needs and wants and what they're after. The realistic expectation, and this is what I share with clients all the time, is that when you're looking at an investment opportunity, you need to have defined clearly what's your goal. Because so many times we sit with an investor and we'll ask that question, and across the table they look at us and it's like, well, to make money or to earn the highest return I possibly can, or some fill in the blank, and we appreciate that, because virtually every investor has that same objective.
Yeah, right.
But ultimately it needs to be
a little more defined than that.
Let's really define what it is, because I want to make sure that we're aligned with the expectations,
right?
And that that if our goal can meet your goal, your expectation, your needs. If it can't, then that's not a good relationship to start out on. So
yeah, sure.
So those are things that we're pretty careful to try to identify.
Yeah, that's good. Kind of one specific last question, and then I've got a general question for you before we start to wrap up. So the specific question is, tell us, as business owners, we all want to own our own, we all think we're supposed to own our own building, right? And we don't want to be paying rent to some landlord for the rest of our lives. And so we want to own our own property. What should we be doing to do that? What's that process look like? I mean, I know I'm smart enough to know that, hey, I can go rent that, or, maybe there's a piece of land, but, if I'm going to go, should I start with you? Where should I be starting? If I'm a business that wants to own my own building, what should I be thinking about? What's that process like?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So for us, when we're interviewing or speaking with a potential client about trying to buy a piece of real estate for their business, one of the first questions that I ask them is, can you earn a higher rate of return by investing the amount of capital you're going to put into this building through your business? And sometimes if the answer is yes, then you don't need to own a building.
Sure.
You need to invest more in your business.
Right.
Right? Because 9 times out of 10, that piece of real estate is not going to return that same type of return on the dollar.
Yeah.
I like to start there, and then if it's an established business that's been around for a while, and it could be a factor of like, yeah, that's important to us, but not the most thing that's important to us. We have other reasons. For instance, maybe it's a generational thing, or it could be just, yeah, I'm looking for retirement purposes, that I'm going to sell my business in so many years, I want to lease it back. I mean, there's 100 different reasons why someone wants to do it. Where we start past that part of the conversation is identifying what their need is, what kind of ground zero for them. If they had to pick a location in town, another building, replicate that. So we try to start there, and then it's trying to understand their appetite and aptitude to go out and do something, whether it's ground up or it's a conversion of an existing building. And so it's like, what's your pain tolerance, right? So because it's a process.
Sure.
And then it's qualifying them financially, looking at it, saying, okay, if we go ground up, it's going to be X. If you buy an existing building, do a renovation, it's going to be another number, another set of numbers. Looking at the financing component, are they an SBA candidate? Are they a conventional loan candidate? Do they have the equity piece available? So usually I recommend it starts with somebody like us that can walk them through a series of questions and helping them to get to an answer of, hey, I've checked all the boxes. Now I'm ready to go out and to really go and make this investment. Because again, for us, it's about having clients that are informed about the processes and what it's going to take. And that way we can be very specific and very laser in on fulfilling their needs. So because buying a building for your business, I know for so many people is like kind of the end of, not the end, but in terms of like, that's a big mountain to climb.
Sure.
And I fully respect that. I mean, it's part of what we do. But I think there's a lot of questions to ask getting to that point. And then once you feel comfortable, you've answered all those and you're comfortable with the decision, then there's a process that we help people day in and day out walk through.
Yeah, I'm sure I'm wrong for the record, but it doesn't feel like that happens. That thought process that you just, you just spoke of, that, we go through and, hey, why don't you invest that money in your own business? Have you thought about this? And it seems like with a lot of clients, they just go, hey, I want my own building and there's one for sale. And so I'm going to go buy that. That's what it feels like. And I think there should be more, process, more intentionality in it than that. And I'm glad to hear you say it from that way. Do you guys work on a consultative basis ever, or are you guys strictly transactional?
Yeah, we can, and we have in the past. We have fees that we can charge on an hourly basis, and we have programs as well where we can lay out the economics for somebody. We can show them. One tool that we've used over the years is a lease versus buy analysis that we can complete for them, which kind of takes them through the entire process of buying something and costs getting into it, cost for renovation costs, and then also looking at the tax benefits on the back end of it.
Sure.
So they can kind of compare, because again, owning something, depreciation benefits, typically that's usually the biggest factor in terms of swaying somebody from a cost basis of on a year in and year out is the depreciation factor, because, expensing things like rent and operating costs to run the air conditioning, and that's going to happen no matter what. But depreciation is a factor only comes from home ownership. I mean, from ownership of real estate, right?
Yeah, right. And I said I wasn't going to ask you any more specific questions, but you just opened the door for me too. By the way, tell our listeners about cost segregation studies.
Yeah, so cost segregation is a really huge component, especially for anybody who's doing any type of brand new construction or doing a significant renovation. So it's taking advantage of accelerating depreciation of those specific items that the tax code allows you to do, and taking the benefit of that reduction up front versus over the 39 years,
Sure.
So it...
Yeah, it's a big thing for me. If we have a client that's doing commercial projects and then they're going to do another one and another one and another one. So, if it's a single facility, we have that conversation, and maybe it makes sense to have that cost segregation study, but they're front loading everything, right? And so you get a great tax benefit up front, but that terminates at some point in time. And so, or it diminishes at least, at the very, very least, it diminishes substantially. So we have that conversation. I like to see it when a client is going to build something and then it's another one and another one. So there's always some kind of depreciation stream that can kind of shelter taxability, if you will.
Yeah, I was going to mention that we talked about the investment piece, and I think this applies as well with ownership for a small business. So one reason why I made a conscious decision back a number of years ago to limit my exposure in the stock market and decide to put my investment in real estate, and I mean, I guess it makes sense because it's what I do, right? But also I looked at it from the standpoint of, with real estate, I gain the advantage of, hopefully if I make the right decisions, cash flow coming off of that property. I get principal reduction of my mortgage every month by somebody else making the mortgage payment for me if I have it rented out to the right tenant and the right deal structure. I get the benefits of depreciation, so I'm lowering my ordinary income expenses and my taxable income out of the gate, and I have ongoing tax benefits with that. I also get the tax deferment through a 1031. If I sold the property, I'm not having to pay those taxes right away as I would if I sold a stock and had a huge gain in Apple or whatever.
Sure.
I'm paying the tax when I sell it and just deal with it, right? Sure. And we have opportunity zone investment now, so you can defer into that as well. And then, of course, the other big component of real estate is appreciation. So you add all those together, and to me, real estate investing is a unique vehicle for the average person to put money into for all those benefits. Again, I'm biased, but I don't feel as though other investments have necessarily the same opportunity.
No, they don't have the same attributes. They really don't. It's very unique from that perspective. And I think for the right people that it should be a part of their portfolio. I really do believe that. Okay, my last question. This is a generic question, and that is, what have I not asked you? And so what should you tell us that you haven't told us?
Yeah, gosh, let's see.
So that's a broad question.
Yeah.
That's my catch-all question.
Yeah, it's a catch-all question, right? Yeah, that's a good one. I'm trying to think. I think I covered pretty much most of it. I think that for us, the key is having a level of trust and understanding in terms of what somebody wants to do, how we can help them achieve that. That comes through a relationship of, a great referral response from you saying, hey, Anthony, I have a client who has some needs. I know you're going to take care of them. We meet together, we walk through it. But that's really where it starts. I think that there's so many people over the years we've experienced this, and you may see this too sometimes, where, as you said, the business owner sees a for sale sign and for lease sign. They pick up the phone, they call somebody, and next thing they know, they're knee deep into a conversation or negotiation on a piece of real estate, and they might be a little lost or not 100% confident that they know exactly where they're going or what they're doing, but they're too deep in to make a decision to back out or make a change. I always recommend call somebody you trust, call somebody who you can rely on and say, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. What do you think? Is this a good idea? And it's a simple meeting, a simple conversation, Zoom, face-to-face, doesn't matter these days. It's all the same, but that would be the one thing I would recommend.
Yeah, sure. It's really good. We always ask a couple of personal questions at the end, kind of what we call our rapid fire questions that we can pick into your life. And we've already talked about this a little bit, but you've been what I believe to be a very motivated individual. And I'm a huge podcaster, by the way. I have so many podcasts on my phone that I listen to, big variety, but one of the groups that I love listening to are what I would call inspirational or motivational people. And you're one of those. What was it? Yeah, no, definitely. What was it that drove you?
I think early on is just a level of self-confidence. Where I received that from, I'm not sure. But, like as I mentioned, the piecework concept in the carpentry world is that I realized that I could make so much more money betting on myself than relying on others. And so just being so dependent on that and seeing it happen. Believe me, there were some very lean years and tough times, sure. Going through early stages of selling and not really selling anything or making any money, having to have, determination and tenacity to get up every morning and, lace up your shoes and move on.
Yeah, dial the phone.
Yeah. Right. So that's a huge part of it. I think also the commitment I have to my family, in terms of it's such a huge piece of our life. And, my wife and I have been married 36 years. We have, our kids are grown now, work with us in our business. We have, a couple of new grandkids. And so it's just the family unit and the dependent, feeling so committed to not letting them down in terms of I want to perform for them every single day. And now we're at a point to where we're doing it for for generational reasons, not necessarily for myself or for my wife. So, which is a great thing. We're in a position to do that and spend a lot of time day to day to help our family kind of even, move on to, greater things.
Mm-hmm. Next question was if you could turn back time and talk to your 18-year-old self, or maybe you're going to mentor somebody that's 18 or 21 that's coming into that commercial real estate profession, what point would you try to beat into their head?
I think the simplest thing is it's going to be okay.
Right.
Right. It's going to be okay, but also that it comes at a price. But everything comes at a price.
Sure.
Right. Even things that don't work out the way you want them to come at a price.
Yeah. Right.
Right. So it's just a matter of what price do you want to pay, and so I think recognizing that do I want to put forth a sacrifice in a certain amount of time and effort to achieve a certain goal, or do I want to not do it and suffer the consequences? Again, we're paying a price either way that we do it, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. There's no doubt about it. It's I turned 60 last month.
Oh, great.
Excuse me, not last month. Now 2 months ago, and I've been a relative gym rat a decent part of my life, and I felt like I was always in shape more than the next person, and all of those different things, but not so much lately, right? It really feels I've been really hard on myself at times, and so that's that paying the price, right? You can go, hey, I'm not going to do what I'm supposed to do, or I'm going to misbehave, but then you're going to pay for that later in some manner. So
it's going to show up.
Yeah. That point resonates with me a lot. So last question, if you found out the world were ending in a year, what'd you do with your time? How'd you spend it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question, John. We recently, this year has been a very unusual year for my wife and I. My father passed away.
Sorry.
Yeah, thank you. A few months ago. And so he was 91, lived a great life. But you see that happening, and then a close friend of ours was diagnosed with an ailment that not certain exactly how long they may have. Relatively, young. I mean, he's basically our age. You think that's young, so
right.
But
we want it to be young.
We want it to be young, yeah. But it's eye-opening because we've had the conversation around that. It's like, well, what would you do? And you think about ideas of, I want to travel, do this and that. Like, no, I think you just want to hug your loved ones and be around your family and make sure that everything is okay and, spend quality time with those that mean the most to you.
Sure.
And so, because we've been so fortunate and blessed in so many ways in our life up to this point of being able to experience so many things, and the hard work that we have put into our business and into our family has paid off for us, in so many ways that we are extremely fortunate for the things we've been able to do. So, we there isn't anything out there that I haven't done that I'd say, gosh, that's one I've missed on my bucket list that I got to go chase that mountain down, in the next 12 months. But, and it's great that we're in a position to say that,
Sure.
but I'd say for the most part, I think, surround myself by those that we all love. And
yeah, Anthony, I've asked that question a handful of times, and I've certainly got different responses. I asked a dear friend of mine that one time, and I kind of didn't ask him the question. I kind of made a statement to him, and this guy's a bit of a workaholic, and I said, hey, bud, he was grumbling because he had to take a vacation with his wife, basically. Okay, and so he was kind of griping about it, and I said, you need to change what you're doing, or you're going to die at your desk. Mm-hmm. And he said in very plain language to me, I hope so. And he was very serious about that. And so, but that's who he is. Right. And honestly, who he is he loves his work, loves his business, loves his work, and loves what he does. And it shows. He's phenomenally successful, and he is taking more time. He is starting to take more time, and all of those things. But it's difficult because you have to fight so hard to get here in the first place, and then sometimes it's hard to then let it go when you're there. So
it's so true. I think it's. You're absolutely right. I think it's the challenge that we face day in and day out to achieve what we've been able to achieve and slay the dragons and fight the battles. And you're still standing. And so all of a sudden you go, oh, well, I think I'm just going to slow way down and not, I'm not going to carry my sword anymore. Like, no, wait a minute. I've got to carry my sword. I may not use it as much, but right. I mean, it's like, it's hard to see yourself slowing down, but I do think that things like, again, this year, the events that we've experienced, unfortunately, do bring to light the fact that we are mortal, that,
sure.
That relationships are what's important and those around us and our loved ones, because we can't replace those.
Absolutely. So. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, how would they do that? What's your phone number? Yeah.
So my direct line is 661-617-1850. I have 2 email addresses. I have my Anthony at oliviericommercial.com and then Anthony at BOMAR.partners. And then also, I'm on LinkedIn and Facebook and Instagram, Twitter, not on YouTube at this point.
At this point, right? Yeah, all the media that we have to go through and the things that we're doing. So,
exactly.
Anthony, thank you so much for coming in and sharing. I love entrepreneurial success. People have kind of started with nothing and kind of figured out and pushed through and been motivated to get it up. And you certainly have that success story. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, thanks so much.
You bet. Thank you.
This show has been brought to you by the Law Office of Kyle Jones, Troy Burton with the Lynn Company, CPA John Duffield, Scott Hansen Real Estate Lender, broker and investor, Dave Plivlich, President and CEO of the Marcom Group and MarcomBranding.com, and Amanda DiGiacomo, President of Atlas Financial Solutions. You've been listening to the Our 2 Cents podcast. Check out the show notes for links and more information about the show. Also visit our website at our2centspodcast.com or catch us on Instagram at Our 2 Cents Podcasts. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please subscribe and share with others.